And Sam, to underline Adam's point, the congressman's point, I'm looking at your new polls that you brought with us today, and most of the numbers pretty much unchanged. A little bit here, a little bit there. Mike Pence, actually, responsibility drops 10 points from 37 to 27% from January 21 to June 22. But I go over to the next poll, which talks about Trump's ticks down a little bit, but that's mainly because of Republicans, where in January of 2021, 41% of Republicans blamed Trump. For January 6th, that has dropped to 29% now, proving that, again, 2/3 of the Republican Party all in on the big lie.
Yeah, and it's not just the voters. I mean, we now have contemporaneous reporting that, the elected officials themselves, Kevin McCarthy, Lindsey Graham, Mitch McConnell, they all blamed Trump privately after January 6th. They all wanted him gone. They all even committed to their colleagues that they would encourage him to resign. So implicit in that was them saying Trump was responsible for what happened on that day. And now, of course, we're, a year and a half removed from it. And they all implicitly are supportive of Trump. And so, it's not just the GOP electorate, it's the GOP elected officials as well who have taken the blame away from Trump and applied it elsewhere.
Yeah, I want to get to Michael Still to get his reaction to that in a second. But first, some interesting gun legislation polling that you all took. Numbers are all exceedingly high. They're all 80s. Ban sales, red flag laws, require 3-day waiting period, 81%. Require guns to be stored in safe units, 76%. Ban high-capacity magazines, 69%. Ban them completely, 66%. Ban them on schools, college campuses, 66%. I mean, the takeaway, numbers are all high. It's just like background checks, and you just have to ask yourself, has any organization ever perverted the American democratic process more than the NRA, where you have one issue after another, 60, 70, 80% support from the American people? I guess another, I think, more pertinent question to ask is, has any political party ever ignored the will of the American people on any issue? And most remarkably, on a public safety issue like this?
Joe, I mean, it feels like we're having deja vu here. How many times have you and I and the rest of the crew talked about these polling numbers in the wake of a mass shooting and wondered what is going on in terms of stoppage of political progress? In this case, it's different, obviously, because we have a tentative gun legislative framework that's coming out of the Senate. But it doesn't include any of those provisions that have immense popularity in our poll. And to your point, yes, the politics of this have been warped tremendously. The Republican Party has committed to the idea, the proposition, that if they were to sign on to far-reaching gun legislation, it would be to their political peril. All I will say is we have sort of an experiment with this in Florida in the wake of the nightclub shooting there, where then Governor Rick Scott signed legislation that raised the age of an assault weapon purchase to 21. And he did not suffer for it. He is now in the United States Senate. Scott says this is something that states should take up individually. But I think that sort of proves your point, which is that maybe we have, or maybe the lore of the NRA's power on this is misplaced.
Yeah, I think so. Michael Steele, we can look at Florida after Parkland. One of the most conservative legislatures in America passed gun legislation. There are very conservative members of Congress who voted for banning of military-style weapons. They all got reelected. Every one of them. You go to Connecticut, you look at the Republicans who, after Sandy Hook, passed some of the most sweeping gun safety laws in America, and some just out and out gun control laws up in Connecticut. Those legislators all got reelected. I mean, this is again, I'm kind of curious how the NRA continues this lie. Support us or you won't get reelected. Your base won't support you. It's just not the truth.
It's not the truth, and they do it through two means. One is the threat of an opponent in a primary, and the other is the withdrawal of cash. They have flooded the GOP market with a lot of money over the years. You go pull the FEC filings for any members of the United States Senate from McConnell on down, and you will see how deeply those tentacles reach. And, of course, if you want to continue the narrative around the idea of fear, clear about those things that are important to you, like cash and your reelection, this is the way to do it. And you dangle this out in front, even though the evidence, as shown by Senator Scott and others, will tell you something very, very different, that there is not a penalty for doing the right thing in this space, Joe. As the polling shows, how will you get unelected on a 70% issue?
Yeah.
How do you get unelected on an 80% issue? It's all BS, and they know it. And yet the party continues to perpetuate the lie around it because it's cash and primary votes. And so hopefully some of this fever is starting to break. You've got a growing effort out there among responsible gun owners, like yourself, Joe, and others who are taking a different narrative. You have very strong Second Amendment conservatives like Joe Walsh, who are moving into a different space and partnering with folks like David Hogg and others to move this narrative. And so there's some real opportunities here. And of course, the gun owners of America is really challenging the supremacy, the primacy of the NRA. So there's a lot of vibration in this space. The polling strengthens that vibration in a way that we haven't seen in a long time, and thus this time is different, it appears.